Hello and welcome to State of the Nation. It is December 29th. We took last week off for Christmas, and I don't even think we really told anyone. We just didn't show up on Twitch one week. But we are back, Nation. Dan, my good friend Bagged Milk, and of course I am Tyler Yaremchuk, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there. Actually, no, it disappeared, so you can't see that. But boys, how was your holiday weekend?
Well, I'll let your good friend answer first.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate that acknowledgement, Dan. I think the most important thing that came out of my Christmas break, Tyler, was an air fryer. It's changing the game. We just spent 3 or 4 minutes pre-show talking about air fryers rather than what we were going to talk about the Oilers. But I think that's really what matters, is that I'm eating healthier despite my love of fried foods.
Yeah, I had a great holiday break with the family. We're all kind of hunkered down as it is, so good times abound. Yeah. But I got a new water cooler for Christmas, so that was nice.
You could have conversations around it.
Yes. It's nice to have. It's like a very clutch thing that you don't really realize you don't have until it's gone. But now that I've got it, it's just it's something special. So Tyler, get a water cooler.
A water cooler. All right.
I would add a water cooler to my new air fryer lifestyle.
I want you to have like employee-like and coworker-like conversations with members of your family around it, though, Dan. That's just stand there and be like, so did you see the game last night?
Yes, we will have water cooler conversations.
That's great. I got this.
Can we have
sweater.
A water cooler conversation right now?
Let's have a water cooler conversation right now.
Did you guys know that Ethan Bear signed a new contract?
2 years.
I heard that late last night.
$2 million a season, a smidge higher actually than I thought it'd be. I was thinking 1 year, $900K, and I was like, if they go 2 years, maybe like 1.8-ish, but 2 years, $2 million. Like the second year of that deal should be a value.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, we talked about this on Oilers Nation Radio. I was trying to find which episode we talked about it on, but it turns out we talked about Ethan Bear a lot. So it was hard to say. Like, we made some predictions. I guess I was surprised for me that he did a 2-year deal at all. I thought for sure 1 year deal was coming, and then next year the Oilers have more cap space open up. Yeah. I thought that was going to be the play, but I'm not at all upset in any way, shape, or form about this deal.
No, I'm not either. And the other thing it does too is like they have some interesting contracts to get done over the next few off seasons. Like obviously Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Kyler Yamamoto's next off season as well. Like if you would have done the Darnell Nurse is coming up soon, or sorry, he's 2 years away. But if you would have done the 1 year deal for Bear next off season, you would have been in a scenario where it's like, okay, we need to get Yamamoto done. We need to get Nuge done. There's always the goaltending thing that needs to get sorted out. Barry, Larson are there as well. Like, you would have left yourself a lot of work for next offseason. So the second year, I think it's beneficial for the Oilers. And from Bear's perspective, he gets a second season to establish himself. And after that, maybe you're looking at a 7-year deal. Some cap space opens up. And if he keeps going the way his career's kind of trending right now, that's a big deal, big ticket you could be looking at.
Well, that's the thing that strikes me too, Tyler, is just because like Ethan Bear, I think if he continues the trajectory, and I don't necessarily expect him to develop in a straight line, he's going to have hiccups, especially people know how good he is now. So that's going to be a challenge for him this year. But I think you're 100% right. If he plays as well as he can and that we believe he can over the next 2 years, he's going to be a rich young man in a couple of years. And I like the bet on himself. And like I think we all said, he basically got more money, albeit not by much, than we thought he would.
We still maintain a little bit of control at the end of the contract, though, right? So there's that element too, where it's a good deal for the team. We still maintain control, and yeah, it's good for the kid where he can just take 2 years and doesn't have to, he doesn't have to be worried about contract in the next offseason kind of thing. So yeah, you guys have said it all already.
Yeah, I think
I'm just really looking forward to seeing how he plays this year, because I think he for me, I mean, I know Tyson Barrie's here now, so he's going to be an offensive defenseman for the Oilers, but I think outside of Barrie, Ethan Bear is a pretty unique player on the Oilers back end. He's got some really nice puck skills. I don't think power play 2 is going to play all that often this year, but I think I'd like to see him get some power play time this year and start developing that, because he's got a big clapper. He's a right-handed shot, nice little puck skills. He always does something impressive with the puck in the defensive zone. So I'm really looking forward to how he progresses this year.
And the other exciting thing for me too is we went out and got some defensive depth. It's been something I've been asking for on ON radio for a couple couple of months now, and Slater Cuckoo is exactly what the doctor ordered when it comes to some depth there. Now you're looking at probably a PTO of Ryan Stanton that'll turn into maybe something more for the old taxi squad, but it's such a nice confidence builder to see those pieces just kind of sliding into place here at the end. I mean, it's something that we're getting used to now, I think, with Ken Holland. He's got a plan, and every piece has its spot to fit in there. Ethan Bear's negotiations probably took longer than most people thought it would, but yeah, everything's now in place for the season coming up.
It's funny too, Dan, because you said something about we're expecting and learning about how Ken Holland operates. I keep waiting for some massive, glorious fuck up to happen, and it really hasn't. Even looking at the way obviously yesterday, Andreas Athanasiou signed in Los Angeles for the year. So that was a conversation in Oilers Twitter. And I was a guy, Tyler, I know you were on the same page, where we were talking about they should try to find a way to make it work. But with the moves that he's done afterward, Ken Holland, that is, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm glad he didn't double down and try to just make that trade work because he gave up assets, which was the complaint from everybody, myself included. But I'm just kind of happy to see how things worked out, because he ended up getting some players of value that maybe nobody expected, like a Slater Cuckoo, to add depth on that left side.
Well, you go back to that big debate we had in the offseason of, do you qualify Benning? Do you qualify Athanasiou? And that would have put them around $5 million in cap space between the two of them. And at the time, we were kind of going, I think you do it. You gave up the 2 second-round picks. Benning's been here a few years. You find a way to bring those guys back. But with that $5 million now, you look at how he's stretched his dollars. Ennis, $1 million. Cahoon, under $1 million. Cuckoo, add him in there. Pretty much a Benning replacement, in my opinion. You get Turris in that mix as well, and you get Barry and
Puljujarvi.
And Puljujarvi. All those players added up were, not too much more than the $5 million you would have had to spend. I know it's probably closer to whatever, $8 million, but still, you get what I'm saying.
I know I've been drinking the Oilers Kool-Aid this offseason, but this is the kind of offseason, if we had done the signing of Benning, the Athanasiou, tucked in, Slater Cuckoo or whatever at the end, that would have been an okay offseason, just because this team was already good enough to make the playoffs, and then you kind of want to see what maybe they're going to do. But this is one of those off seasons you're going to look back at it, hopefully, and say, this was Ken Holland really building something to go deeper. And not just sit on his hands and say, what we've been saying, which is that outside of a bad goaltending playoff run, this team was ready to compete and be able to battle with the Vegases of the world, kind of thing. And now, you can say that again, because the team has gone and just made little moves, little tweaks, little additions here and there that didn't just toe the line and maybe lose a couple of draft picks for your cause.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that Brownlee had an interesting comment, just kind of to punctuate what Dan said, where Brownlee's got an article up right now on OilersNation.com, where he just kind of said, Ken Holland chipped away and brought in guys, let players develop into roles where they're looking like they can compete. And there's no Cam Barker or Nikita Nikitin that's expected to fix this. And it's true. It's true. Yep. I know as Oilers fans, we're all pumped up about guys like Evan Bouchard and Philip Broberg, but looking at the depth chart right now, they're probably not going to play this year, or I should say at the very least, they're probably not going to play right away.
Yeah.
And that's a massive change in an organizational kind of outlook that we haven't seen in forever from the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, and to that point too, Bag Milk, sorry, Tyler, I know you got a point to get out there, but I just was going to say with the taxi squad, right? For every team around the league, they are going to have AHL players on those taxi squads. We're not alone in, being tight against the cap. And so yeah, when the next guy up is Slater Cuckoo instead of Philip Broberg, that's a huge thing for your organization, because Broberg is going to be fine when he gets in there. But Cuckoo is that replacement level player that we don't have to worry about as much. And so you're not having to rely on your AHL replacement players to pick up the slack.
And there's a lot of pressure. Sorry, Tyler, I'm cutting you off again. There's a lot of pressure on this organization to make tangible steps forward. And I think having players who are NHL players and not necessarily trying to fight above their weight class, that's going to be a huge deal for the Oilers this year. It's not like Dan said, Philip Broberg is going to be great. He's probably going to be fine and A-OK. But right now, let him ease into it, dip the old toes in the pool as opposed to getting chucked in the deep end.
Just hitting up the chat line here on Twitch. Some call me Timmy97. Ken really showed he's a grown-up GM with the AA non-sign. And I think that's a great point, too. Like a younger, more inexperienced GM. Someone who, they might have given into the pressure. Yeah, or Peter Chiarelli. They might have given into the pressure and said, you know what, if I let Athanasiou walk, that trade looks terrible. And they might have gotten a little bit scared into signing a bad contract and bringing back a guy like that. But Ken Holland didn't do that. Also, shout out to everyone who's in the chat right now. It's very active today.
Well, it's like, I mean, the trade does look bad because it is bad. But again, I tweeted this yesterday, and I think the funny thing for me was the amount of revisionist history that goes into the Athanasiou thing, as if a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people were pumped on deadline day when that trade went through. I just think that it's interesting now because it looks like such a glorious fuck up in hindsight that people are like, I can't believe he traded two second rounders and Sam Gagner to get him. Well, at the time you were trading for a guy with potential that has scored 30 goals and was a restricted free agent at the end of the season. So it looked like you were trading two assets to get a guy you were going to keep long-term. But obviously we know what happened there with a fucking pandemic stepping in the way. Well,
exactly. I was going to say, and everybody now we have to look at it the way that on March the 16th or March the 15th, the every deal that you made goes out the door. Yeah. People are going to look back and say, Connor McDavid's making too much money from this Oilers team. Like that kind of stuff. You just can't do it because previous in the world, if exactly had happened, what had happened to us happened in the regular world where we got eliminated by the Nashville Predators in the first round. And it was because of goaltending, blah, 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 blah. We're probably re-signing Athanasiou, tucking him in under a normal cap number of issues there. We planned for that to be a scenario that we play out, and maybe we had to say goodbye to Ennis. The world changed on March the 16th. Nothing is normal anymore, and it's as if we forget that the trade deadline was right before the pandemic hit, and so those trades, you just can't look at them in the same light anymore.
Daredevil Clown says the cap was supposed to climb up to 85 to 88 million this year, and that's
exactly
right. Like that extra 6 million you could have had, that's Athanasiou in a normal year, and the pandemic kind of screwed it around. But I mean, some teams have struggled with the pandemic to have a good offseason, and I don't think that's the case for Ken Holland. I think he's made a ton of really good moves. Iron Blizzard talked about the third line in the chat and how good it is. And like that's another thing too, is Draisaitl being the MVP that he is, McDavid being Connor friggin' McDavid, like that's a headache already for opposing head coaches. Do you throw your best D pairing, your shutdown line? Do you throw them up against Draisaitl or McDavid? One of them's getting an easy matchup. You know who's getting an even easier matchup? Turris, Puljujarvi, and Ennis. And two of those guys have scored 20 goals in the NHL or can score at a 20-goal pace, and the other guy's the 4th overall pick. That's a good line.
That's a great line. And like outside of the 2017 playoff run where the Oilers actually had an effective third line a little bit, like I don't remember the last time they did.
I mean, like the 06 playoff run with who was it? Was it Stoll? No, Stoll was number 2.
If anything, we were trying like for years after 2006, they were trying to put a third line up as the first line. And it just like, so I just like, just for funsies, I pulled up a random GDB from just over 2 years ago. And the third line was Kyle Brodziak and Lucic on it.
Yeah.
So if you compare that to what they have right now, it's not. Oh, and by the way, the third guy on that line was Ty Ratty. So you're looking at two guys. Brodziak, who was an NHL player, had a hell of a career, but he's now retired. Ratty is no longer in the league, and Lucic probably shouldn't be. So it just shows like how different it is this year, at least in my opinion. But again, that's just I drank the Kool-Aid, man. I got to do it.
Yeah. And again, you could probably go back through a lot of years. There would probably be a lot of off seasons where if the Oilers brought in Devin Shore, that would be considered one of a third line guy who might have some potential. He was the other PTO though. That's where I'm going with bringing up Devin Shore's name. I like this signing. In my weekly rumors blog that drops every Thursday, by the way, I've been saying for about a month now, the 3 things the Oilers need to get done: sign Ethan Bear, did that. get a depth defenseman. Slater Cuckoo did that. And I kept saying, find another veteran centerman, because if one or two guys go down, knock on wood, you don't want anyone getting hurt, but injuries are going to happen, especially in a short, condensed season where they're playing every second night. Get as many centermen as you can on this roster. And now you have McDavid, Draisaitl in the top 6. Nuge can be a top 6 centerman if you need him to. And now in the bottom 6, it's Turris, it's Kyra, it's Haas, and now it's Devin Shore potentially as well. You're suddenly building up a lot of depth there.
Well, yeah. And you said it too. I mean, I think the craziest thing since we last all came together for ON Radio that's dropped is that schedule. We're looking at just an absolute gauntlet of games. Now, that's not different for any other team, but like, my, oh my. So like, you're right. It's these injuries. Like I think we've been talking about it on ON Radio since the end of the playoff bubble, but just talking about how if we're existing outside of a bubble, the COVID cases are going to happen. People are going to get COVID, and it's just the reality of life. And so yeah, when you're signing a guy like Shore, these are just little tweaks that you're right, Tyler. Those would have been an absolute get for the teams of the Decade of Darkness. But here we are, we're looking at him as, 5th or 6th centerman. And that's great. That's a great move if you end up signing him.
Can we talk about the schedule just for a second, since Dan brought it up? I'm looking at January. Tyler, you're a baseball guy. Mm-hmm. I love these baseball style mini series that are going to happen. I fucking love it. I am so excited to see what this does for the rivalries between all of these Canadian teams. It's going to be so much fun and stressful.
There's a part of me that wonders if teams are going to get fatigued of the rivalries. Like, it's just going to be exhausting having played 3 emotional games against the Flames. And then, the Toronto Maple Leafs are coming to town and we hate them too. Like, there's just going to be so many situations. Like, when you look at that calendar view, it is just wild to think of the trips that we're going to have and the stretches of games against rivals.
And how often during a normal season do we get a matchup where we go, oh, this is a 4-point game, like playoff race, giddy up. We have 56 4-point games coming up this season, because like, I'm a little bit higher on Ottawa than a lot of people. I could honestly see a scenario.
I don't think Ottawa's going to be a gimme team by any means.
They're absolutely not. They got better between the pipes. They got better on the blue line. They got better down the middle, and they have good young players. Like, every game is going to be a nail biter. Every game is going to be intense. I like the series aspect as well. I think that will also go a long way in making sure the best team ends up winning this division. I think when you got to play a team 3 times in a row, the odds of you, if you just have an off night, going right? Like, it takes out an element of randomness, and it also forces teams to use both their goaltenders, which again will just test depth. So I think the schedule is really exciting. It's going to be, like you said, a gauntlet, and there's
Well, and that's the thing too, Tyler, since you brought it up, because that's where I'm still concerned about the roster. Yeah, I think that there's some defensemen that are going to need to maybe fight about a little bit higher in their weight class than they should be. But the goaltending aspect of all these back-to-backs, that's where the Oilers really have some pressure on them. Mm. It's Koskinen. And to me, I don't see anybody else on the roster. I mean, sure, you could say guys like Chason that are in contract years and they're going to be looking for jobs, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see anybody with as much pressure on them this year as the goaltending.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that we've been guilty of not talking about it as much, even in the mailbag and stuff. I think a lot of people have been worried about, the show me year for Barry or the show me year for, all these other guys. But yeah, the goaltending is just, you're absolutely right. It's going to be an absolute pressure cooker for those guys. And like, one guy goes in a bad slump, like we had in December last year with Mike Smith. Like, you're going back to him every second night or every third.
It can't happen.
Still, so it's
like,
just,
it can't happen.
Yeah.
You got a month point. Like, I'm looking at the schedule as you're talking here, Dan. You got a month like March where there's 3 sets of back-to-backs in March, and there's 2 every other month, it seems like. So like, those are guaranteed weekends, 3 weekends in this specific case in March, where both goalies are going to go. They got to play. Yeah. And you can't, like Dan said, have a guy shitting the bed for a month at a time, because with a compressed schedule like this, it just doesn't work. Otherwise, we're going to have Anton Forsberg getting the call in, and we don't even know. We kind of forget that he exists.
I think that that's a key there, and I think that was a savvy little pickup. I don't think he's a bad option. as a replacement, especially when compared to Smith and Koskinen. I imagine that there's not a scenario where we don't see Anton Forsberg starting this year. I think most teams are going to have 3 goalies starting at some point, because the reality is these guys are going to get burnt out. This is going to be a tough schedule for these goalies. And they're going to be feeling it. So yeah, it's a real scenario to have Anton Forsberg as the starting goalie for the Oilers a couple games this year.
Yeah. A lot of games to go. I mean, there's a lot. Everybody's in the same boat. We all know that, but there's, it adds a different flavor of pressure to everybody. Like, I think to Tyler's point about Ottawa, I could see a team like Ottawa maybe making some unexpected noise this year because nobody expects anything from them.
Yeah.
They just got to go out there and play. And we got young kids that are skilled guys, and you got a goalie that can play. Matt Murray's a cup winner. There's, they just traded for Stepan. Like there's some vets that I'm not going to say they're going to win the division or anything, but they might surprise people when they think that's going to be a gimme night in Ottawa. And then all of a sudden that's not how it goes.
It's the Oilers of the lockout year all over again with Ralph Kruger as their head coach, that kind of thing, where it's just, go out and win 1 game of every 3 or 2 games of every 3, and who knows what happens, right? They're going to make some noise this year. Everybody's that bottom end of the division is going to be pretty high up, I think, in the points, because they're just all going to be winning games. Everybody's going to get a couple W's here and there.
Here's a good question, and it's something I think we might dig into a little bit more on Oilers Nation Radio, and here's a hint. It might be the Sherwood Ford Giant question, but who's the most overrated team in the Canadian division?
That's tough.
I would say, yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead, Big. Okay. I was going to say the Canadians, and I know that I get, I hate on the Canadians a lot. I think that,
you said all their fan bases died.
I think that Canadian fans have overvalued their team on the whole. It's not a bad team by any means, but it's definitely not like, there's a lot of reclamation projects. It feels like the Oilers of the decade of darkness, where you've got, Tyler Toffoli, who hasn't been able to really stick any in his time there in LA. There's guys there where Thomas Tatar, like these guys, these names where you're like, oh yeah, that guy had a lot of promise. They just traded Max Domi for Josh Anderson. Like, it's just, there's a lot to that team where I like the guys, I like the players individually, but to me, it doesn't make a great team.
Just looking at the chat line here, I don't know what to call this thing, the comment section, I guess. Killy Billy Hilly says Toronto. Spank Yag says Leafs hands down. Young Angus says Montreal by far. Some call me Timmy 97. Canadians just picked up Perry. That's going to suck. Like, even the Perry edition doesn't do anything. Like, I don't care. He was very annoying.
He always is.
He stirs it up.
Yeah,
he makes you mad at the team, but he's not.
If he wants to go to the penalty box,
like,
he's not. And he was extremely average in the regular season for Dallas. Like, he was okay, and in the playoffs, that's where he kind of makes his money now, I guess. But I look at Montreal, and I'm going to agree with you, Dan. Like, they picked up Joel Edmondson, third pairing guy. Yes, they got Josh Anderson. He's got injury question marks, and they had to give up Max Domi to get him. So that was a subtraction just as much as it was an addition for them. And like Toffoli, okay, that excites me a little bit. They're still very young down the middle. And I don't know, I think they're banking on a lot of young guys taking steps forward. I think Vancouver...
Carey Price stepping up like big time.
Yeah, and Carey Price, that's obviously the X factor there, is he could probably carry them to a playoff spot all on his own. And I'm also not sold on Vancouver either.
I was going to say, so my pick, I think, would be Vancouver, because you talk about Toffoli. Well, they traded a decent package for him to get him. He played a handful of games and he's gone. Holtby did not have, this isn't the Holtby that won a bunch of games in Washington.
He's got miles on him.
So the defense, I mean, I like the trade that they did with Vegas.
Yeah, Nate Schmidt's good.
But I mean, I just think that there's a lot of people. It kind of reminds me of when the Oilers went on that cup run, or not cup run, but it made the playoffs in 2017. And a lot of people the next year were like, oh, the Oilers are going to take a tangible step forward. They got some playoff experience and blah, blah, blah. But then they also lost some key pieces that offseason, and it turned out to be a disaster. I could very much see Vancouver being in that same kind of ilk, where maybe they still make the playoffs, but it's the 4th spot instead of where some people think they're going to go.
I think that's fair too.
The only thing I was going to say to the Toronto picks of the chat, I understand that, like, and I think that there is some people out there, like the analytics culture right now is saying that they're going to get 90 points and everybody's going to have 68 points otherwise. And I get that. But I do think the reality is that Toronto's going to be in the top 2 conversation, top 2 or 3 conversation.
Toronto's going to be good
the whole year. They're a good team. Great now,
players.
Are they making it past the first round of the playoffs? I don't think so, but we'll see who the matchup is. But I don't think that they're necessarily overrated. I think that they're the team. I'm happy with them to be the team to beat. We have Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and then insert all the other names after that, and people are still not calling us the favorite. That's perfect by me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just adds more pressure onto the Maple Leafs. I think I would not be at all surprised if the Leafs won the division. I just wouldn't. They're a very good, high scoring team. But the thing is that the guys that they got super excited about this year were a little bit funny to me. Like Joe Thornton would have been great if you picked him up 15 years ago.
Wayne Simmons,
same thing. 10 years ago, Spets is a year older. I look at their defense. I like the pickup of
Brody's
TJ
good.
Brody.
Yeah.
TJ Brody's really good. I like the deal they got Muzzin on, but they're still Travis Dermott and Bogosian on the third pairing, according to dailyfaceoff.com. Just like it doesn't, there's holes there, and their goaltending, frankly, if Anderson isn't the number one and, they play him a lot, Jack Campbell is their backup right now. And that's no lock either.
Yeah, I think you can go through every team in the Canadian division to an extent and probably poke some holes in them. Killy Billy Hilly, what's your divisions 1, 2, 3? We only got a couple minutes left, or really 1 minute left, so I'm gonna put that on the side. We'll maybe get to that next Tuesday. We'll obviously have a ton more hockey talk coming up on Oilers Nation Radio and Nation Real Life. We'll have new episodes dropping on Thursday of both of those potentially. And the last thing I wanted to touch on quickly before we wrap up, World Juniors. I'm going to plug my World Junior preview. That's up on the website. Canada is 2-0, but as I said in the start of my preview, 2 ugly games, because watching them beat down on Germany wasn't a ton of fun. And
boring.
Yeah, it was boring, and they played like garbage against Slovakia and won 3-1. So it's been a weird start for Canada, but this is really their last easy matchup before the tournament ramps up, because then it's Finland, then it's medal round.
But I also would suggest, the Swiss always give Canada a hard time. You know what I mean? It's just something about playing Switzerland where it's just, I don't know if it's looking ahead after this game or whatever it is, but it always seems like Switzerland gives Canada a hard time with the World Juniors. I also want to say, courtesy of our friends at Hockey Canada, we're going to have a jersey giveaway coming up on both Oilers Nation's social media and Flames Nation, if for some reason you're watching this as a Flames fan. And also check out hockeycanada.ca/50/50 to get in on the 50/50 they got going on. Currently, as we record this at 1:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, it is $156,000. Let's go get yourself some tickets if you decide to do that.
All right. There we go. Dan, can I get a score prediction for the Canada game tonight?
I'm going to say 3-1.
3-1, so another close one.
Gets his first goal.
I like that. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say 6-1 Canada. I agree. I think Holloway gets on the board. Holloway. He's playing on that top line with Cousins and McMichael. That'll be a really interesting trio to watch. Holloway's going to kind of be the forechecker, the grit of that line. So I think that'll be a really fun trio. Bagmilk, score prediction tonight?
I'm going to go 6-2.
6-2.
And just to end things off, I want to give a massive shout out to Josh Park for the fucking Ethan Bear video that he made. It's just ridiculous. If you haven't seen it, check it out on Oilers Nation on Twitter, Nation_ON on Instagram or on Facebook. Josh Park, very talented.
All right.
Where did we find that guy?
Hanging around. Yeah. All right. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. We'll be back next Tuesday for another 30 minutes of hockey talk on State of the Nation. Tell a friend about it, because the more people we get in that chat box, or in whatever I'm calling it now, the more fun it'll be. So Nation Dan, my friend Bagged Milk, hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for joining. State of the Nation. It is over.
Go Trappers.